In this video, I'd like to talk about manipulating formulas. And essentially, we will look at different algebraic formulas using these variables, and we will need to solve for one in particular. Now, with this problem, the following formula is used in economics to find a company's gross profit rate P, where S is the net sales and C is the cost of goods sold. And you can see the formula right here. Rearrange the formula to highlight the cost of goods sold. And since we're looking for the cost and we know C represents the cost of goods sold, we need to rearrange this formula so that we're solving it for the variable C. And to do that, there are a couple different ways to think about this. One is that you can replace the other variables with numbers and think about how you might solve that equation. For instance, if let's say we set P equal to 2 and maybe S equal to 1 or 3 or something like that, then you would have an equation like this. And actually, let's set it S equal to 3 so that we actually have a fraction in the denominator. But the main idea is that rewriting this with numbers can help develop a strategy for how to actually solve for C. So this is just one way to simplify this so that you can recognize the pattern or the techniques that are needed to solve this. And to solve this formula with numbers, we would first need to get rid of the fraction. We could multiply both sides of the equation by 3. That would give us 6 is 3 minus C. We could subtract 3 on each side so that we get 3 is negative C. And then multiply everything by negative 1 to cancel out this negative here. So in this case, C would be negative 3. Now, of course, this just illustrates the strategy that we need to use. So we'll need to apply this to this formula here to actually solve for C in terms of P and S rather than specific values of P and S. And if we rewrite this down below, we have that P, the gross profit rate, is equal to S, the net sales, minus the cost of goods sold, C, all divided by S, the net sales. And when we were dealing with just numbers, we multiplied each side by this denominator here so that we can cancel out the fraction, since we know 3 over 3 is just 1. And we will apply that same technique, except in this case we have a variable in the denominator, so we can multiply each side by that variable. Since something divided by itself is equal to 1, and S divided by S will just cancel out. So we get S multiplied by P is equal to S minus C. Now, to get C by itself, we will need to get rid of this S term. And since this is a positive S, we can use subtraction. We can subtract S from each side since S minus S is just 0. So these right here will cancel out. And again, just looking at the equation where we substituted numbers, we had 6 equals 3 minus C, and we subtracted 3 on each side so that we can get negative C by itself. And at this point, we would have SP minus S is equal to negative C. And to get rid of this negative, we can multiply each side of the equation by negative 1. And if we do that, then negative C multiplied by negative 1, let me just make a little bit more room here. That would be positive C, since negative times negative is positive, and 1 times C is just C. And over here, we could distribute the negative, or we can just leave the negative on the outside. It doesn't matter. So let's distribute the negative here. We would have minus SP, and negative 1 times by negative S would be plus S. And if we want, we can rewrite this as S minus SP is equal to C. But this right here would be our formula rearranged in terms of the cost of goods sold, this variable C. Now, keep in mind, there are often multiple different approaches to rearranging a formula. For instance, if we rewrote this, we could rewrite the right-hand side in terms of two different fractions where we have a difference. Since we would still have p on the left, but we are dividing each of these terms by s. And we could just rewrite this as s over s minus c over s. And this would simplify to p is equal to 1 minus c over s, since s over s is just 1. And from here, we can subtract 1 on each side, so that we get p minus 1 is negative c over s. And if we multiply both sides of the equation by this denominator here, we can get c by itself. And let's actually multiply by negative s, so that the negative cancels out as well. And on the right-hand side, the negatives would cancel, and then s divided by s, that would cancel as well. So we would end up with just positive c. And on the left-hand side, we would distribute the negative s. We would get minus sp. And then negative 1 times negative s would be positive s. But that's exactly what we found using the other method. In fact, if we rewrite this as c is s minus sp, we can see that that's exactly what we found here. So there are often different approaches, and there is arguably another approach besides this, but I will leave you there. I encourage you to try approaching this from as many different methods as possible, just so that you can see the various different strategies for how to actually solve for these different variables.